In the vast chambers of the Zexian High Command, Supreme Commander Varric stood before the massive holographic display, his crystalline appendages glinting under the artificial light. The image before him showed a seemingly unremarkable blue planet, the third from an average yellow star in what the Zexians had long considered empty space. 10,000 cycles of conquest. Varric's voice resonated through the chamber, and now we find them. His subordinates, each a towering figure of crystalline and biomechanical fusion, remained silent as they studied the readings from their long-range probes. The Zexian Empire had ruled the known galaxy through technological superiority and ruthless efficiency. Their bodies, perfect unions of crystal and machine, had evolved far beyond mere organic limitations. Each Zexian was effectively immortal, their consciousness preserved in crystalline matrices that could survive millennia. They had encountered and subjugated countless species, but none had ever posed a real challenge. First Intelligence Officer Nera stepped forward, her movements precise and deliberate. Supreme Commander, the preliminary analysis of this species, they call themselves humans, suggests some anomalies. She projected additional data streams into the holographic display. They've progressed from primitive combustion engines to rudimentary space travel in less than 200 cycles. Laughter, a sound like chiming crystals, echoed through the chamber. Rapid development only means they lack refinement, another commander commented dismissively. Their technology must be crude, unstable. Naira's crystalline structure pulsed with subtle warning colors. There's more. They appear to have developed along unusual lines. While their space presence is limited, we've detected energy signatures we cannot fully classify. Their information networks are sophisticated enough that our best intrusion protocols have failed to. Enough. Varric raised a limb, silencing her. You suggest we should be concerned about a species that hasn't even colonized its own solar system, one that still relies on organic bodies. His form shifted, displaying the patterns that indicated amused confidence. They barely existed long enough to learn to walk. The strategic display updated, showing the positioning of the Zexian battle fleet. 50 capital ships, each carrying enough firepower to reduce a planet's surface to molten slag. Over 10,000 years of technological refinement, tested and proven in countless conquests. Send the standard greeting, Varric commanded. Inform them of their options: immediate surrender and integration into the Empire, or immediate extinction. Their response will determine whether we preserve their infrastructure for our use, or simply harvest their planet's core for resources. The transmission was sent, broadcast in every known frequency and format. The Zexian commanders waited, expecting the usual response: panic, desperate pleas for mercy, or futile threats. Instead, there was silence. Hours passed. The Zexian fleet moved closer, their sensors probing the human defenses. They detected orbital stations, modest defense platforms, and a small fleet of warships that seemed almost primitive by comparison to their own vessels. Finally, a response came. A simple text transmission, broadcast on an obsolete radio frequency. To the Zexian Empire, we acknowledge your message. Your ultimatum has been considered and rejected. We recommend you retreat immediately. This is your only warning. The Zexian command chamber erupted in crystalline laughter again. Varric himself displayed patterns of deep amusement. They reject our ultimatum. With their handful of ships and primitive weapons, he turned to his fleet commanders. Perhaps we should show them why no species has successfully resisted us in 10,000 years. But First Intelligence Officer Nera wasn't laughing. Her sensors had detected something odd about the transmission. It had come from somewhere deep in the asteroid belt, not from Earth or any of their visible stations. And there was something else, a subtle complexity to the signal that suggested capabilities far beyond simple radio waves. Supreme Commander, she began, I recommend we conduct more thorough scans before. Deploy the fleet, Varric commanded, ignoring her. Standard conquest formation. Let's remind the galaxy why the Zexian Empire remains undefeated. As the massive fleet began to move, Naira's sensors detected something else. A brief energy spike from Earth's moon, gone almost before she could register it. She tried to analyze it, but the signature matched nothing in their vast databases. The humans had warned them to retreat. In 10,000 years of conquest, no species had ever done that. They had begged, threatened, or tried to negotiate, but never simply warned. As she watched the fleet advance, Naira couldn't shake the feeling that the Zexian Empire was about to learn why. The Zexian battle fleet moved through space with mechanical precision, their crystalline ships refracting starlight in dazzling patterns. Aboard the flagship, Supreme Commander Verix monitored the approach to Earth, expecting to see signs of panic as his fleet drew closer. Instead, the human stations and ships maintained their positions, going about their business as if 50 planet-killing warships weren't bearing down on them. Curious, Fleet Admiral Karn observed, his crystalline form pulsing with confusion. Their civilian vessels aren't even attempting to evacuate. Their orbital stations continue normal operations. First Intelligence Officer Nera had been analyzing the human communications they could intercept. They're discussing ordinary matters: weather, entertainment, commerce. Her sensors registered increasing uncertainty. Either they're operating on a level of denial we've never encountered, or they're not afraid. Verix finished, his voice carrying an edge that made his subordinates' crystals vibrate uneasily. Scan their orbital defenses again. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The scans revealed what they'd seen before: a modest fleet of human warships, seemingly powered by simple fusion drives. Their weapons appeared to be conventional mass drivers and nuclear-tipped missiles. The orbital stations carried point defense systems that looked barely capable of handling meteor threats, let alone a Zexian assault. But something was wrong. Naira felt it in her crystalline core. The humans were too calm, their ship's movements too precise, and there were those energy signatures she couldn't classify, appearing and disappearing at the edge of their sensors. The fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, and still, Earth made no aggressive moves, no desperate last-minute diplomatic overtures, no attempts to parley or negotiate, just that same, steady silence that had followed their single warning. Launch probe drones, Verix commanded. Full spectrum analysis of their defensive grid. The drones shot forward, their sophisticated sensors probing Earth's defenses. For 3 minutes, they transmitted normal data. Then, one by one, they went dark. Malfunction, Karn suggested, but his crystalline patterns showed he didn't believe it. Impossible, Verix declared. Our drones don't malfunction. All units, full battle stations, prepare tow. He never finished the order. Throughout the fleet, ships suddenly lost power. Screens went dark. Weapons systems failed. Even the crystalline matrices that powered their advanced technology flickered uncertainly. It lasted only seconds, but when systems restored, the tactical display had changed dramatically. Where there had been empty space around the fleet, now hundreds of previously invisible human ships had appeared. They were sleek, dark vessels that seemed to absorb both light and sensor scans, making them hard to focus on even now that they were visible. Impossible, Verix whispered, his crystalline form pulsing with disbelief. They couldn't have hidden a fleet this size. Our sensors were only seeing what we were meant to see, Naira interrupted, her analysis crystals pulsing rapidly. Supreme Commander, I'm detecting energy signatures throughout their fleet that match nothing in our database. They're ships. They're not using fusion drives at all. The ones we saw before were decoys. A transmission cut through their confusion, broadcast simultaneously to every ship in the Zexian fleet. The voice was calm, almost conversational. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We did warn you to retreat. What you're seeing now represents approximately 20% of our actual defensive capabilities. Would you like to reconsider your options? Verix's command staff stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. The human ships had positioned themselves with impossible precision, each Zexian vessel now targeted by multiple opponents. But more disturbing than their numbers was their design. Looking at them now, Naira realized these ships incorporated technologies the Zexians had never imagined, let alone encountered. "Supreme Commander," she said quietly, "I'm detecting quantum field manipulations, gravitational distortions, and something else. They're not just matching our technology. They're operating on principles we haven't even discovered." "Absurd," Varric snapped, but his confident patterns had faded to uncertain pulses. "They're bluffing. No species could advance this far without us knowing. This is some kind of trick. All ships, prepare tow." A single human vessel, smaller than the others, suddenly appeared directly in front of the Zexian flagship. It had bypassed all their defenses, all their sensors, as if they simply didn't exist. A new voice came through their communications. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order." The voice was male, calm but carrying an edge of steel. "The device we're about to activate will temporarily disrupt your crystalline matrices. Don't worry, it won't cause permanent damage. Consider it a sample of what will happen if you choose to continue this invasion." Before any Zexian could respond, a wave of energy washed through the fleet. Every crystalline being aboard every ship felt their consciousness flicker, like a light struggling to stay lit. It lasted only a moment, but it left them all shaken to their core. They had just experienced something that should have been impossible, a direct attack on the fundamental technology that made them who they were. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Zexian Empire faced not just defeat, but complete technological superiority. For the first time in 10 millennia, the command deck of a Zexian flagship was completely silent. Supreme Commander Varric's crystalline form had dulled to a matte gray, a sign of deep distress among his kind. Around him, his officers struggled to process what had just happened, how their supposedly invincible fleet had been completely outmaneuvered by a species they'd dismissed as primitive. First Intelligence Officer Naira's analysis crystals were working at maximum capacity, trying to understand the technology the humans were displaying. "Supreme Commander," she reported, her tone carrying the Zexian equivalent of awe. "I've completed initial analysis of their ships. They're not actually there." "Explain," Varric demanded, his form flickering with confusion. "The vessels we're seeing are projecting themselves across multiple quantum states simultaneously. They exist in a superposition of locations, making it impossible to target them effectively. Even our most advanced tracking systems can't lock onto something that exists in several places at once." Another transmission from the human fleet cut through their internal communications. "We've been watching your empire for quite some time." Admiral Chen's voice was matter-of-fact. 50 years ago, one of your survey ships passed through our solar system. You didn't notice us. We made sure of that. But we noticed you." On the tactical display, historical data began playing, showing decades of human technological development. The Zexians watched in stunned silence as humanity's advancement was revealed to be far more dramatic than they'd imagined. "You see," Chen continued, "when we detected your ship, we also detected your quantum wake signature. It led us straight to your empire. We've had stealth observation posts in your territory for 45 years. Every technology you developed, every strategy you employed against other species, we studied it all." Varric's form pulsed with rage and disbelief. "Impossible. Our security was based on crystalline quantum computing." A new voice interrupted. Dr. James Martinez, Earth's Director of Advanced Research, joined the transmission. "Brilliant technology, truly. But it has one fundamental flaw. It operates on predictable quantum frequencies. Once we understood that, we could mask our presence completely." The tactical display updated again, showing human observation posts throughout Zexian space, hundreds of them, all previously undetected. Some were within meters of major Zexian installations. "While you were busy conquering obvious threats," Martinez continued, "we were developing in an entirely different direction. You focused on crystalline technology, pushing it to its limits. We explored quantum manipulation, dark energy harnessing, and dimensional phase shifting. You built bigger ships and more powerful weapons. We learned how to exist between moments of time. As if to demonstrate, 3 human ships suddenly appeared inside the Zexian formation, passing through their supposedly impenetrable shields as if they weren't there. They moved with impossible grace, their dark hulls seeming to bend reality around them. Your greatest weakness, Admiral Chen added, was your certainty. 10,000 years of victory convinced you that you had reached the pinnacle of possible technology. You stopped looking for alternatives. But humanity. We never stop asking, what if? Naira's analysis crystals were practically vibrating with new data. Supreme Commander, I'm detecting energy signatures from their ships that suggest they're not just manipulating quantum states. They're actively rewriting local physics. They can alter fundamental forces within their operational sphere. The implications hit the Zexian command staff like a physical blow. They weren't just facing superior technology. They were facing an entirely different understanding of how the universe worked. A small object materialized in the center of the Zexian command deck, a simple wooden cube, completely impossible to replicate with their technology. Dr. Martinez's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. That cube exists in 6 different dimensions simultaneously. We can do the same with our entire fleet. How do you fight an enemy that can step sideways through reality? But what's truly interesting, Admiral Chen added, is that we've only shown you our defensive capabilities. Would you like to see what our weapons can do? Or would you prefer to reconsider your position on galactic conquest? For the first time in their long history, the Zexian command staff experienced a new emotion. Fear, not of destruction. Their crystalline forms could survive almost anything. No, they feared something far worse, irrelevance. In a single encounter, everything they had believed about their technological superiority had been proven not just wrong, but fundamentally limited. Varric stared at the wooden cube, watching it shimmer as it phased between dimensions. All their power, all their advanced technology, and they couldn't even replicate this simple object. He realized with growing horror that they hadn't just underestimated humanity's current capabilities, they had completely failed to understand humanity's potential. And somewhere in the back of his crystalline consciousness, a terrifying question formed. What else had humanity discovered while they weren't looking? Supreme Commander Varric had spent thousands of years making decisions that shaped the fate of entire civilizations. But now, facing the impossible capabilities of humanity, he made the worst decision possible. He panicked. All ships, open fire. His command rang through the fleet. Full spectrum assault. Show these humans the true power of the Zexian Empire. The massive Zexian fleet erupted with energy, their most powerful weapons unleashing streams of destructive force that could shatter planets. The space around them lit up like a new sun being born, their attacks powerful enough to vaporize entire armadas. But they hit nothing. The human ships simply weren't there when the attacks arrived. They existed between the moments of time, shifting through dimensional spaces the Zexians couldn't even perceive. Admiral Chen's voice came through again, now tinged with disappointment. We really hoped you wouldn't do that. Initiate Protocol Omega. What happened next would be studied by xenohistorians for centuries to come. The human fleet didn't just attack, they rewrote the rules of engagement entirely. Ships appeared and disappeared faster than Zexian sensors could track, each appearance precisely calculated to exploit a different weakness in Zexian defenses. Fascinating, isn't it? Dr. Martinez's voice carried the calm interest of a scientist observing an experiment. Your crystalline technology is incredibly advanced, but it operates on strictly quantum principles. We discovered something beyond quantum mechanics. We call it wave-particle consciousness manipulation. As he spoke, the human ships began emitting fields of strange energy. Wherever these fields touched a Zexian vessel, its crystalline technology started behaving in impossible ways. Weapons fired backwards. Shields protected the space around ships, but left the ships themselves exposed. Communication systems broadcast crew members' private thoughts instead of commands. You see, Martinez continued, your consciousness exists as quantum information stored in crystalline matrices. Impressive technology, but ultimately predictable. We can rewrite that information in real time. First Intelligence Officer Naira watched in horror as ship after ship in the Zexian fleet began to lose coherence. Not through destruction. The humans weren't damaging them at all. Instead, they were systematically disconnecting the crystalline matrices from their control systems. Stop. Varix commanded, his form flickering with desperation. How are you doing this? This defies all known laws of physics. Admiral Chen's response was calm but carried an edge of steel. Known to you, perhaps, but humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our perspective. We looked at the universe and asked different questions. While you asked, how can we make our crystals more powerful? We asked what lies beyond the quantum realm. A new type of human ship appeared near the Zexian flagship. It was smaller than the others, almost delicate in appearance, but Naira's sensors detected energy patterns that made her crystalline structure resonate with fear. This ship wasn't just manipulating reality. It was actively generating new physical laws within its operational sphere. This, Dr. Martinez explained, is what we call a reality architecture vessel. It doesn't just use technology. It creates new rules for how technology can work. Would you like to see what happens when we redefine the fundamental forces holding your crystalline matrices together? The demonstration that followed wasn't violent. It was transcendent. The human vessel created a field that made Zexian technology simply stop making sense. Their quantum-based systems tried to operate in a space where quantum mechanics worked differently. The result was like trying to run water uphill. Possible, but only if you completely change how gravity worked. Naira's analysis crystals were overwhelmed trying to process what she was seeing. Supreme Commander, she reported, her voice carrying the Zexian equivalent of awe. They're not just more advanced than us. They're operating on a level of science we didn't know existed. It's like we've been playing a two-dimensional game, and they just showed us the third dimension. The reality architecture vessel expanded its field, and suddenly, the entire Zexian fleet found itself operating under new physical laws. Their mighty weapons couldn't fire because the concept of energy projection worked differently. Their advanced shields were meaningless because particle interaction followed new rules. Their faster-than-light drives were useless because space itself behaved differently within the field. In less than an hour, without destroying a single ship or taking a single life, humanity had rendered the most powerful fleet in the galaxy completely helpless. Admiral Chen's final transmission carried a hint of genuine sympathy. Your empire has stood for 10,000 years, accomplishing amazing things, but you stopped growing, stopped questioning, stopped imagining new possibilities. That's something humanity will never do. Now shall we discuss the terms of your species' evolution rather than its surrender? The Zexian Empire had just learned the hardest lesson in its long history. True power doesn't come from having the strongest weapons or the most advanced technology. It comes from never stopping to wonder what else might be possible. 3 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the Great Hall of Contemplation on the Zexian homeworld hosted an unprecedented gathering. For the first time in 10,000 years, representatives from every spacefaring species in the known galaxy had been invited to witness something extraordinary: the voluntary transformation of the Zexian Empire. Supreme Commander Varix, his crystalline form now modified to incorporate some of humanity's quantum consciousness innovations, stood before the assembled delegates. Beside him stood Admiral Chen and Dr. Martinez, their presence a symbol of the remarkable change that had occurred. For 10 millennia, Varix began, his voice carrying through the vast chamber. We believed we had achieved the peak of possible development. We were wrong. Humanity showed us not just new technologies, but new ways of thinking about existence itself. The assembled delegates murmured among themselves. Many had come expecting to see the Zexians humiliated, their empire dismantled. Instead, they were witnessing something far more profound, an ancient civilization choosing to evolve. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, activating a holographic display that filled the chamber with swirling patterns of quantum probability waves. The universe, he explained, is not a set of rules to be mastered, but a canvas of possibilities to be explored. Humanity didn't defeat the Zexian Empire. We showed them doors they didn't know existed. And they chose to walk through them, Admiral Chen added, her presence a reminder of the power that had forced this change. But there was no triumph in her voice, only quiet satisfaction. The display shifted, showing the new joint human-Zexian research facilities being established throughout the galaxy. Where once the Zexians had built fortresses and weapons platforms, now they were creating centers of learning and exploration. Our first breakthrough, Dr. Martinez continued, was teaching Zexian crystalline matrices to operate beyond quantum limitations. By incorporating human wave particle consciousness theory, we've enabled their technology to evolve in ways they never imagined possible. A demonstration followed. A group of young Zexians, their forms shimmering with new possibilities, showed how they could now exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, a feat that would have been considered impossible just months ago. But more important than the technology, Admiral Chen emphasized, is the change in perspective. The Zexian Empire isn't becoming human. They're becoming something new, something that combines the best of both our species' approaches to understanding the universe. Varix's form pulsed with colors that represented both pride and humility, a combination that would have been impossible in the old empire. We thought power came from having answers, he admitted. Humanity showed us that true power comes from never stopping to ask questions. The declaration that followed changed the course of galactic history. The Zexian Empire would be transformed into the Galactic Cooperation for Advancement and Discovery. Their vast fleets would be converted into exploration vessels. Their military bases would become research centers, and most importantly, their accumulated knowledge would be shared freely with all species willing to join in the pursuit of understanding. But, Varix added, causing the chamber to fall silent, let this also serve as a lesson to all gathered here. Humanity didn't defeat us through superior firepower or more advanced technology. They defeated us by being willing to imagine possibilities we had never considered. Dr. Martinez smiled. And that's humanity's true gift to the galaxy. Not our technology, not our scientific theories, but our perpetual curiosity. Our constant question, what if? As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many stopped to examine a simple object displayed prominently near the exit. A wooden cube, still shifting between dimensions. Below it, a plaque bore an inscription in every known language. The universe is not limited by what we know to be possible. It is limited only by what we fail to imagine. In the years that followed, the galaxy entered an unprecedented age of discovery and advancement. Species that had once lived in fear of the Zexian Empire now worked alongside their former oppressors, exploring new frontiers of science and consciousness. And at the heart of it all was humanity's greatest contribution, the understanding that no matter how far you advance, there are always new questions to ask, new possibilities to explore, new ways to grow. The former Supreme Commander Varix, now Director of Evolutionary Studies, was often heard to say that the humans hadn't just defeated the mightiest empire in history. They had liberated it from the prison of its own certainty. And somewhere in deep space, human ships continued to probe the boundaries of reality, asking new questions, finding new answers, and always wondering, what else is possible?